What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 144. Back after a long layoff. Hope you guys missed us, and hopefully it's been a fast spring and summer for you all so far. Feel like it has been a pretty fast year. Obviously, it takes a while for college football to come back around, but I feel like this year in particular has moved pretty quick. And man, the calendar's flipped to July. Just so glad to be back talking college football. We're back this year with the SEC preview series again, starting that tonight. So just stay locked into us the rest of the summer and all the way through football season. We're thrilled to be back talking college football, SEC football, and I tell you what, it's going to be an unbelievable season. I think the parity is at an all time high, and yeah, just glad to be back.
Absolutely. It definitely has been a extremely fast off season, a lot faster than usual. Had some life-changing events happen, got married. Your boy got married back in March, and we're expecting a kid here coming soon. So if you're watching this in a few days, you'll know that with me and my wife, Haley, we are expecting our first child. So a lot of exciting things, got married and expecting a kid all before Cameron got his haircut again after my wedding. He was in my
There
wedding,
you go,
obviously.
man. Hey,
You're
hey,
happy.
that's it, man. That was quick. No, man, it's been an exciting year for sure. I mean, it was an honor to be a part of your wedding. Obviously been a big, busy spring and summer so far for both of us. Like you said, just a lot of personal things going on, and everybody's that way. Everybody gets busy, and it's a busy time of year. That so we hate it took as long as it did to get back. But like I said, we're just extremely pumped. It's definitely been on our minds. Well, I feel like a lot's happened since the season's been over. A couple things we can touch on before we get into previews. I feel like first and foremost, the biggest story I think from the spring was the Nico situation at Tennessee was obviously a big one. That made headlines for several weeks. Uh, Even though the situation moved pretty quickly, but just that saga went on for a several week stretch, which was really crazy to see unfold and almost, really kind of a historic type of situation. Like we haven't really seen it to that degree before, and to have it play out in the media like it did was kind of crazy to see. The college football playoff format is going to be different this year. They're going to more of the straight seeding, rather than the top four conference champions being the top four. They're just going, right? Like I said, if the fourth best conference champion, if they're really the 10th best team, that's where they'll be seeded. They won't automatically get a top four seed. So I thought that was a positive change as well. But
Absolutely.
obviously, had a lot. It's been different, and I feel like harder for coverage in the spring because a lot of spring games have been changed now. They're not nearly as televised. With the transfer portal also being in the spring, I feel like a lot of teams have kind of wanted to play everything close to the vest. Not wanting to expose too many players, as crazy as it sounds, because everybody's just worried about their roster getting rated, and that's a point in the year where you're trying to get your team set and not knowing who you're going to have. It's a scary proposition for all these coaches in college football. So
Yes.
definitely the spring practice and the 8A games, spring games, things of that nature have definitely been different, uh, as drastically different as they've been in a long time this year in particular. Just not near as much coverage as we've seen in the past, which is unfortunate. But I mean, at the same time, I feel like you can only take so much from the last scrimmage of spring, and I don't think it's hurt interest or anything like that. Once this summer and fall rolls around, everybody's just itching to get back and have college football on the TV again.
Yeah, spring ball, I mean, as little as it is now, little as it means now to the fans anyway, it really didn't mean that much in the past. I mean, I remember 2015, 2016, I could be wrong. Around that time, Auburn had a wide receiver that won the MVP of that 8A game, and he never saw the field and ended up transferring that year. So it doesn't mean it's not the end all be all. I mean, there's guys that perform in spring games that never see the field when it comes to fall. So it's, you want to see how your guys are going to go out there and play, but really at the end of the day, it's not the end all be all, especially now. Like you said, coaches want to keep things close to the vest, not let their guys get scouted even more than they already are going to be. I do think that there needs to be another closed window or another way to go about the transfer portal. I think there needs to be one big open window after the season. And then once spring, a few weeks before spring starts, you close that, and then that's it. And then you can't transfer again until the end of the football season. I think that's how it needs to be, because you got coaches they got their team set going into spring, and then they got guys leaving and they still don't have their team set. So I mean, that's a big headache for not just the big schools, but all the little schools, because you got smaller schools that have their standout guys, and then one of their guys jumps out of the spring because he had a really good spring that was noticed by somebody. I just think it's ridiculous, and they're asking these guys to do a little too much. Now I get it; they're getting paid millions of dollars, but something needs to be done about it, where there's a one big open transfer portal window. You go where you go, and then when spring starts, you can't transfer again until after the national championship or after the bowl season starts, whatever you want it to be. But I think that needs to happen. But speaking of transfers, you touched on it earlier. We got to touch on this Nico Iamaleava situation. Um, Really bad situation for all parties involved. I did like the way that Tennessee handled it, in the sense that they pretty much put their foot down and they weren't going to let a player walk all over them. And I think that set a great precedent for the whole of college football. Um, the players already have all the power, but that was just going to give them unlimited power to do literally whatever they wanted. I mean, you could, if they allowed that to happen, you could have gone week to week after a game. A player has a really good game, a breakout game, in week two, and they say, "I'm not going to play again until you give me $500,000 more dollars." That in between week 2 and 3, if that would have happened with Nico, and they would have allowed him to come back after asking for X amount of more dollars after they've already given him a $2 million deal, then 100% players would have started doing that in the middle of the season. I mean, you heard Nick Saban talking about it back in 2019, 2020, 2021-ish area. He didn't talk about it then, but he spoke about it now that he's out of coaching. He was saying that he had guys saying that they wanted more money, or they weren't going to play in the championship game or the playoff game. You're like, what is this? Like, that you come to a school and you commit to play football, not to get paid. You commit to play football. You'll get paid at the next level. That's where it comes. Now, obviously, we both agree that the student athletes should be getting paid. I think that they bring all that money into the schools, and they bring the fans to the stands, and they have guys doing stuff like we're doing right here. They got the guys buying the merchandise. There's a reason that they're getting paid, but to allow them to just demand more and more and more and more and more, even when they're not producing at the money that they're asking for, it could have got a bit ridiculous. So I'm glad the way that Tennessee handled it. Nico ends up going to UCLA, going back to his home state, close to where he grew up, but he took less money. So I think that lets other players know, okay, maybe I don't want to rock the boat too much. They already given me this deal. You know, you go and you renegotiate after the season, and you get this deal, and then 3 months later you want to renegotiate again. I think that would have made, as much as college football has changed in a worse way, in my opinion, that would have just completely toppled it over, I believe. So I'm glad that it was handled the way it was. But again, bad situation for Tennessee, Heupel, Iamaleava, his family, all of that stuff. It was a really, really tough situation all around. I do want to get your opinion on it. I thought, like I said, Tennessee handled it well. I think that they were in the right with everything that they did. They weren't going to get bullied by one player. While he was a big part of their team and a big player, and one of the biggest players they've had name-wise since probably Peyton Manning played there. I mean, if we're being real, he's probably the biggest name to come into that program since Peyton Manning. You didn't allow him to bully you around. The block T is more important than one person. So I want to get your opinion on that and how that went down.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. To be honest, I mean, it was really just a case of Nico, and obviously a lot of hate comes down on the player, but I know people realize this, but maybe not to the extent. I don't think they realize how many people are in these kids' ears nowadays. I mean, you've got
And he's
dads, you've
19,
got
20 years old.
agents, you've got
Yeah.
everybody's got like a clique with them, and they've got 5, 10 people in their ear. Everybody's trying to get their cut. So, and I think in a lot of cases they lead these young guys in bad directions. And I think this was just a case of they just overplayed their hand, and Tennessee called their bluff on it. And like you said, it's really just unfortunate on all sides. And obviously Nico landed on his feet and is going to be fine. And Tennessee got UCLA's quarterback of all things. I guess
Yeah.
that's just another
Great
layer to
trade,
make
pretty
this a
much.
crazy situation. Yeah, I mean, might as well been a trade pretty much. So, um, yeah, it's unfortunate, like you said, but I think in the end, Tennessee handled it well. And trust me, there's a lot of schools behind closed doors that are like, "Whew, thank goodness!" Like they handled it the way they did. Like, trust me, there was not going to come out and say it, but they were applauding Tennessee, I'm sure, behind closed doors because it would have set a bad precedent, even worse than some of the precedents that have already been set. So, um, yeah, just an unfortunate situation because I mean he's a big time talent and I mean Tennessee starting quarterback on a team that has playoff and championship aspirations that was in the college football playoff last year, and then to now they're not going to have their starting quarterback going into this junior season. Like, I mean, that stinks for college football still. I'm curious to see how he does out at UCLA and how it works out for Tennessee this season. But yeah, definitely an unfortunate situation for sure. But yeah, definitely think Josh Heupel and Tennessee handled it the proper way and the way they thought was best. And like you said, like you have to in your program you have to realize like no one player is bigger than the brand. Like there's no one player, even Peyton Manning, like he's not bigger. I mean, it's crazy to say Peyton Manning's not bigger than the Tennessee brand, but it's like you can't let one guy just walk all over you like that. Like
Right.
you can't one person can't be bigger than the entire program. So yeah, they did the right thing, and yeah, curious to see how it works out. But just like you said, just an unfortunate situation. It's and a team that has playoff, goals and aspirations to not, have one of their best recruits and could have been one of their best players in a long time is just unfortunate for all of the SEC and college football fans.
Absolutely. But this, we're in the preseason previews. Going to be a lot of fun. This is some of my favorite stuff we do. Obviously, it lets you get to know the teams a little more. Lets us get to understand who's going to be on the field for them more than likely, and the new names and all that stuff. So you're not just wondering, oh, who's that guy? He was so and so wore number 26 last year. Who's this 26 this year? So it helps you, gather who's going to be on the field, who's going to be the main guys for these teams in the coming year. This week we got Texas and LSU. We're going to jump into Texas first. Obviously, the biggest story in college football right now, especially in the SEC, biggest name. Just kind of mentioned him a little bit, Arch Manning, the nephew of Peyton Manning. He has gone and what few guys have done this year, again, touching on what we just talked about, or what few guys have done in the recent years, is he stayed. He went there his true freshman year. He's a QB3. Then last year, he's a second string quarterback. Got some playing time when Quinn Ewers got banged up. Played against, I believe it was La Tech that he got his first start. And honestly, he was chunking the ball all over the field, looked really good. But now he's solidified himself as QB1. And my God, has there been some expectations set for this man that I said this 2 years ago when they were talking about he's the highest rated quarterback recruit ever. I said if it's because his last name's Manning, 100%, not knocking his talent, but I don't think the expectations and everything would have been there out of high school if his last name wasn't Manning. And I think the same thing now. Great talent. We've seen him here and there. We know that his arm's a rocket arm. We know he's got great football IQ, and he can lead a team, and he's got the poise of a good, confident quarterback. But I don't think the talk around Arch Manning would be the same if his last name was Andrews or something. You know what I'm saying? So I think that he's going to be good, and I think that Texas is going to be good again. They've got a solid cast on both offense and defense. Have to replace a lot of guys, but they've got a really, really good core group of guys. Obviously, Arch leading the way, but I think that there might be a little bit too much expectations laid on his shoulders right now. It's not like he's Nussmeier and's played already, had his first year last year and's played in the heat of the battle. This guy's is going to be stepping into all that for the first time and going to be feeling the weight of those games on his shoulders for the first time. The real weight of those games, the big SEC games, the playoff implication type games. So I'm excited to see how he does, but there's also a lot of question marks about him, man. What if he does fold under pressure? What if he can't take these teams and lead these guys the way a starting quarterback is expected to take the reins of a team? Now, I'm not saying he can't, but what if he can't? You never know. We have no idea about that. And these guys are already saying he's going to win the Heisman. He's the Heisman favorite. And he's going to take his team to the playoff, potentially to the Final Four, and see what he can do there. That's, again, not saying he can't, but I'm not going to go ahead and jump on that bandwagon and say he's definitely going to do it just because his last name's Manning. But with all that being said, with him at the quarterback position, I do think that we can expect their offense to be a little more explosive in the pass game, going downfield a little more. And that's not a knock on Quinn Ewers. That's pretty much, I mean, you lost some guys last year. You don't have Isaiah Bond anymore. Obviously, Worthy's been in the NFL. But you do have some guys, Ryan Wingo is expected to step up and basically be that dog in the wide receiver room. So you've got him. Emmett Mosley transferred in from Stanford, had a knee injury last year. DeAndre Moore, Parker Livingstone is coming in from Cal, big time guy, 6'5", I believe, 6'5" or 6'4", 210. Sorry, I had those guys mixed up. Jack Andrews is the one that came from Cal, but Parker Livingstone's a freshman, I believe, this year, freshman last year, going to be a redshirt freshman this year, big top guy. He's actually, I was listening to some Tennessee talk and, Texas talk, and he's the biggest or tallest receiver that Sarkisian has had in his wide receiver room since being a head coach in like the last 15 years or something like that. So you can expect some big targets to him, but the losing of the big play wide receivers and Worthy, Bond, Golden from last year, and you're not going to be able to throw a slant and have him take off and take it to the house. A lot like what Tua did. Tua's a great quarterback, but a lot of times when he was at Alabama, he would hit some small, short plays, and the wide receivers would make it happen. Still a 50, 60-yard gain, but it's not like he's throwing a bomb downfield. I think you're going to have to do that a little more, stretch defenses out a little more and make those throws this year in this offense just because you don't have the plethora of those blowing the top off the defense's type receivers. Am I off base there, you think?
No, you're not. It's definitely a young receiving core for sure. A lot of upside, a lot of talent in that room. But just kind of talking about Texas generally, I mean, is anybody hotter than the Horns right now as a program? I mean, they're right up there with anybody. Steve Sarkisian's got that ball rolling. They call it the 40 acres. The 40 acres is absolutely on fire right now, heading into 2025. Off back-to-back playoff appearances, they're looking to take that next step. So I love this Texas team, and in the words of John Gruden, they got me feeling nicey. Because let's just go ahead and hit that music, man. Because the Horns, they're here this year. The Horns are going to be a national title contender.
I believe it. They're making a long run. I do so. Maybe not the number one seed like everyone's expecting, but dude, they're stacked, man. All around, they're stacked.
Obviously, and rightfully so, Arch is getting a lot of notoriety. Everybody's been waiting on this for multiple years. I mean, number one prospect coming out of high school, finally getting the full reins, going into his junior season or redshirt sophomore season. Like you highlighted, I mean, a young receiving core, really talented. Probably one of my favorite players in the SEC, and I think so absolute going to be a star is Ryan Wingo, the sophomore wide receiver. Made some big plays last year. Wasn't necessarily the focal point like a Michael Golden or Matthew Golden was, excuse me. making big plays down the field. I think he's a guy that can step up and be a number one type of option. Um, bringing back um, Quintravion Wisner, um, who really stepped up big last year after, because, remember we talked about it in the preseason last year, how many running back injuries they had in fall camp. He stepped up, was a 1,000-yard rusher. Them bringing back C.J. Baxter is huge. Forms
He was
a
number
big
one overall
1-2
recruit
tandem.
running back in 2023 and then got hurt, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he got hurt I believe in the preseason last year. So having him back's huge. Wisner, obviously having a year of experience and kind of getting thrown to the fire, to be honest with you, because he ended up having a much bigger role than he otherwise would have. But really, I think we know how good Texas can be offensively with Steve Sarkisian, one of, if not the best play caller in college football. But they're going to be really good on the defensive side of the ball. Like that's what's impressive about what Sark's built at Texas is obviously from a talent acquisition standpoint, they're as good as anybody in recruiting. They have just as many or more resources than any program in the country. He's done and bringing the right guys in too. I mean, that's it. It's not just about talent; it's about bringing guys in that fit your culture. And I was going back and listening to Josh Pate's interview with Sark back in the spring, and he was like, "Hey, our first year we were 5-7." He's like, "I looked around, we had no draft picks." Um, it was like it was a total lack of talent, but it's like we have a culture problem. Guys were entitled. Um, just didn't have the right fits within the program. Next year they go 8-5. Their last year in the Big 12, his third season they go 12-2, win the Big 12, make the college football playoff semifinals against Washington and lose. Last year, make it to the semifinals and lose against the eventual champion Ohio State. So he's like, it's been a steady climb. It hasn't been all over the board. Like he's like, from day one, we've just been gradually building up to, kind of this status and this, type of program that can compete for championships year in and year out. So, yeah, it is a little concerning from a production standpoint. I always love to look at, the teams of who's got the most returning production from the year prior. And I think what makes this year so interesting in particular is you've got so many playoff teams from a year ago, so many like top 4, top 5 teams, the Texases, the Ohio States, the Oregons, the Georgias, they're all like 100th or lower in returning production. Some of those second tier teams, like a Clemson, like a SMU, like teams that were in the playoff a year ago, Penn State, who made the semifinals, those teams are near the top in returning production. So I think it's just setting up for a year of parity again, probably even more so than last year, to be honest. So um, that's kind of in the grand scheme of things. But with Texas, I just think the talent, the culture, the way they've been built into this, not saying they're going to win the national title because obviously you look on paper right now, there is no team to beat at the moment. There's a bunch of really good teams, but there's not one that just stands out above the rest. I think there's a group of 8 or 10 teams that you could make a legitimate case that could win the national title, maybe even more than that. But I think Texas is right there at the top of that mix. I think they're going to be a top 3 to 5 team preseason wise. I think the schedule lays out pretty nicely for them, uh, especially comparative to the rest of the SEC. So yeah, I think it's going to be another really big year for Texas. Um, I expect them to be back in the college football playoff and in the SEC championship and national title mix. Honestly, I think they're one of the top contenders, and it's just been really impressive to see what Steve Sarkisian's built there in Austin. And yeah, I mean they've been a fun program to watch because a lot of people say, oh, the Big 12 come to the SEC. Like, I mean this team can compete with anybody in the country, anybody in the conference. They proved that last year, making the SEC title in their first season in the conference. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see where this season goes for them. And I think the reason the expectations are so high is with the other top contenders. I just think the upside that Texas has at quarterback comparative to a lot of other teams in college football, it's just ramped up those expectations that much more.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that is, like you said, the inexperience, but the depth that they have. I mean, I just rattled off some names a minute ago. I'll go back through them. Ryan Winko, Emmett Mosley, DeAndre Moore, Parker Livingstone. Those are some receivers. Jordan Washington is tied in, 6'5", 250, by the way. That is a hoss. Spencer Shannon, there's a lot of hype and expectation around him. Then you got the Jack injuries that came in from Cal. He's expected to kind of replace the Gunnar Helm role from the last few years. Short yardage type guy, not really going downfield, but just getting there, getting some catches, and then making it happen with his body. Then, like you touched on the deep running back room, Quintravian Wisner, returning 1,000-yard rusher. You got C.J. Baxter, like we alluded to, the number one recruit, the 2023 class, number one running back recruit, was actually slated to start and be the number one running back till he had an injury preseason last year. You got Jarrett Gibson, more of like the short yardage back. And then Christian Clark had an Achilles injury last year. Both those, Jarrett Gibson and Christian Clark, are both former four-star players. But the offensive line is where the biggest question mark comes in. You're replacing 4 of your 5 starters. Now, you got your right guard, G.J. Campbell was returning. He was on back-to-back Joe Moore Award watch list, a Joe Moore Award finalist, a part of a Joe Moore Award finalist offensive line in 2023, was on the Joe Moore Award watch list as the offensive line last year. So he's really anchoring that at the right guard position, an absolute dog there. You got Trevor Gooseby at left tackle. This is predictions and what is everybody, the presumptions of what's going to be starting in game one. Trevor Gooseby at left tackle, Cole Hudson at left guard, Connor Robertson at center, DJ Campbell at right guard, and Brandon Baker at right tackle. A lot of those guys have been there. They just haven't really played because they've been behind guys that are in the NFL right now. So there's some question marks there, not necessarily because of are they that good? It's just we haven't seen them. We know they can play. We just haven't seen them in the brunt of the action and really playing together. A lot of how good your offensive line, man, is how well the core meshes together, how well you communicate. Things along those lines. Can you play together as a group, or is it just a cluster out there? So that's really a big part of the offense of success. What comes from it is how well this offensive line performs, being a new crew. But man, you talk about returning players on the defensive side of the ball. They're returning quite a few big name, big time guys. Obviously, they lost some, but they're returning Colin Simmons, arguably one of the top 3 best pass rushers in college football. I mean, he led the team last year with 8.5 sacks, and he wasn't even a legit starter. Then you got Ethan Burke, Trey Moore. They actually added Murad Watson, a freshman All-American from Syracuse. They added him. Cole Brevard's coming over from Purdue. He's an absolute run stopper. I mean, just dominant up the middle. Travis Shaw came from North Carolina. He had a knee injury last year, so he's coming over that. Not sure how long it'll take him to get back in to be able to play in meaningful games. But and then Justice Terry. Then obviously you got Anthony Hill at linebacker, who had 8 sacks last year. And in the defensive backfield, you got Malik Muhammad, Michael Taft, who should have been an All-American last year, former walk-on, who has just turned into an absolute stud there. Jelani McDonald, Derek Williams playing the star position. So you lost Jahdae Barron and Andrew Mukuba last year. Jahdae Barron was the Thorpe Award winner. So you got some guys with some big-time production that you're having to replace, but it's not like you're replacing 11 of 11. You're really only having to replace 2 or 3 guys here or there. Everywhere else they've played meaningful snaps, and they know what it takes. So it's really just plug and play in certain positions. So in my opinion, looking at their schedule, I don't know if you guys have it in front of you right now, but opening up game 1 with Ohio State, like Cameron just mentioned, not really sure what we're expecting from Ohio State, but there's a lot like Texas. They recruit well. They've constantly got depth of 4 and 5 stars, so you can only expect that they're going to be good. In my opinion, I think the absolute floor, like Arch Manning is just deer in headlights, and he's the absolute opposite of what we think he's going to be or what everybody's expecting he's going to be. I think the absolute floor is 8-4 for this team. I think the complete ceiling is 11-1, but in reality, it's probably, I think, 9-3, maybe 10-2. But if you were to ask me right now what I would place money on for an exact win loss total, I would say 9-3. Because you guys look, week one, you got Ohio State. No one's polished week one. There's going to be mistakes. It's who can capitalize on the other team's mistakes and who can shorten and make their mistakes not kill them. So you got Ohio State week one. Then you got week five, you got Florida. So you're starting to work your kinks out, but still nothing's perfect. You got week five, Florida. Then week six, you got Oklahoma, the Red River Shootout. Anything can happen in that game. We've seen the last 2 years. Then game in Georgia. Those are the biggest make or break games to me. Those four games: week one, week five, week six, and week 10, or game one, game five, game six, game 10. They might not be the exact weeks because there's some bye weeks throughout there. But the most brutal part of their schedule that also is going to make or break their season is October. They don't play a single home game in October. Three of their four October games are traditional road games, and the fourth one being the Red River Shootout. So, common field. They're playing at the Texas State Fair. So, not a traditional home game, but three of the other four games, or three of those four games, are legit road games. So that the October season, if they can make it through October, that October stretch with one loss or no losses, I really like their shot at being sitting in one of the top four seeds without a doubt and playing in Atlanta at the end of the year. However, you're going the meat of the season, the middle of the season. You're battling injuries. You uh, load management or whatever you want to call it nowadays, because you got to play. If you're playing into the later into the season, into the postseason, you're playing more games than usual. So that October stretch, man, that is the toughest stretch for them, and that's going to make or break their season, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you laid it out nicely. Obviously, the only big concern I have is like you said, the offensive line. A
Mm-hmm.
little bit on the interior of the defensive line, not as much, but they've just lost so many pieces the last 2 years at that D tackle spot. So that's just so much production to be able to replace. They did do a great job in the portal, going and get interior defensive linemen, that I think is going to be just fine. The rest of their defense absolutely loaded. They're loaded at edge. Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, list goes on and on. They're loaded. Anthony Hill is one of the better inside linebackers in college
Oh, yeah.
football now going to this junior season. And then, like you said, they lost Jade Barron, the Thorpe Award winner. Lost Andrew Makuba, two huge pieces out of that secondary. This secondary is still loaded. I mean, they are
Yeah.
really, really good in the back end, at corner, at safety, as you highlighted. So, I I I think it is a good situation for Arch to come in. I know what the offense is kind of getting their footing. You've got some younger players you're relying on a receiver, although ultra talented. I think they're going to be just fine there. While the offensive line is working out those kinks, only one returning starter, as you said, but that defense I think is the perfect complement to be able to give those guys some time to work through some things. Um, and like I said, Sark is going to have them right. I mean, he's, in my opinion, the best play caller in college football that we've
Without a
seen over
doubt.
the last half decade or more, or half decade or more. So,
Him or Lane
yeah, just
Kiffin, it's a toss up 1A, 1B, honestly, with them two. And they were back to back coordinators at Alabama, which really just chaps my rear, dude. But those two guys are 1A, 1B, in my opinion.
and I don't know if this is fair to do, because honestly, me or you probably could have coordinated the 2020 Alabama offense. But I give Sark a little credit because he was the one coordinating that. Like if it would have been Lane Kiffin, I'd probably give Lane Kiffin the edge over him.
Very
And
fair.
Lane
Very
did a
fair.
great job at Alabama. And he's done a great job at Ole Miss. But and like you said, one of the best offensive minds. But I give Sark's the slight edge just because of that factor, because that
I'm not mad
offense
at it.
was so prolific. I mean,
I agree.
averaged 49 points a game. I mean, dropping a 50 burger every time you take the field, like it was crazy. But so I always lean a little bit Sark's direction just to do that fact. Like I said, I don't know if that's a fair reasoning or not, but He did both of them did a hell of a job, and they're still doing a great job right now. So, yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit of time. Um, that's why that game at Ohio State's so interesting too. So Ohio State's replacing so much production as well. Both teams are going to be figuring out things. A little early feel though. I like Texas in that game. I just feel like they have less question marks than Ohio State. There was
especially
just
on the
so
defense.
much put into that 2024 Ohio State team. Obviously, it played out exactly like they wanted, except maybe losing at home to Michigan. But that'll be a conversation for later in the season. But yeah, all in all, I think this Texas team. Um, I think if I have to put a prediction on it right now, I would lean 10-2. I think at the moment. As I said, I do think my July 1st prediction. I think they win that game in the shoe against Ohio State. But as you said, those two road games are really tricky. At Florida, a Florida team that's really found their identity at the end of the year. Um, they're going to be looking for revenge because they got beat down in that game in Austin last year. Obviously, going to Georgia is obviously going to be a huge matchup later in the year. You said at the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, you got A&M at the end of the year, so there's definitely some potential landmines in that schedule. Albeit it is a pretty favorable schedule compared to the rest of the league. The
Yeah.
October stretch is definitely one to look out for. But I think getting a Kentucky in there, no disrespect, getting a Mississippi State in there will be helpful to them. Getting kind of some of the lower tier teams in the SEC. If you would have thrown like an A&M in there or an Ole Miss in there, something like that, it'd be even more daunting. But yeah, I think I would throw 10-2 on it right now. And I think that's definitely going to be good enough to get back in the college football playoff. I just think the days of teams going undefeated in the SEC is a thing of the past, at least for now. It's going to take a really, really special team to be able to do that nowadays. And to be honest, you just can't stack the amount of talent like you could even 5 or 10 years ago. Even like some of Georgia's teams of 21 and 22, like honestly, they're probably not even going to have that good a team going forward. Like the 2025 version of Georgia is not going to be as good as those teams because you can't stack the amount of talent. The parity is so apparent now in college football. So it's going to take a really, really rare circumstance, I think, to go undefeated in the SEC nowadays. And so there's a lot of teams this year, obviously, that have questions. And it's going to be fun to watch. But I'd put 10-2 on it, and I think they're going to be competing to go to Atlanta and be fairly high seed in the college football playoff.
Absolutely. Now on to the next team. Hit the tunes, Cam. Hit the tunes.
We're going down to Baton Rouge, baby. How about them Tigers?
Gonna be loud, gonna be rocking down there in Baton Rouge. Game one is not Baton Rouge. Game one is South Carolina.
Imagine coming out to this nighttime in Death Valley, baby.
You can't even hear the band nighttime. All you're hearing is echo and scream.
How about those Tigers? The Tigers got big expectations in 2025. This is a big year in Baton Rouge. Fourth year for Brian Kelly. Number one transfer portal class in the country. Top 10 signing class. And who's returning at quarterback? Is that Garrett Nussmeier?
That is the Nussmeier, baby.
About the Nussmeier, baby. Hey, only 4,000-yard returning passer in college football.
And no knock, we all know that I am the captain of the Nuss Bus. I'm driving that thing foot on the floor. He is the only returning 4,000-yard passer in college football. However, he might only be that guy because their running was so atrocious last year. Worst run offense in the SEC last year. 16 out of 16 of rushing offense in the SEC last year. Another bad stat that LSU fans don't want to hear right now: 0-3. Brian Kelly is 0-3 on season openers at LSU. They have got to go 1-4. They've got to go 1-4 now, or excuse me, 1-3. They've got to go 1-3 because they open up with Clemson, who has arguably the best defensive line in college football going into the season. They are absolutely loaded up front on the defensive side. They got a lot of returning guys on the offense. They got Cade Klubnik coming back, but they're playing at Death Valley, not their Death Valley, the other Death Valley in South Carolina, which, say what you want, it's not the SEC, but that place gets rocking.
Oh yeah.
They've got to be more consistent, or excuse me, balanced on the offensive side. If they can be more balanced on the offensive side, I really, really like where this LSU team's going to go. They got a fairly favorable schedule, but still it's fairly tough. You lose both tackles on your offensive line, some interior guys. They're basically rebuilding their whole offensive line too, just like Texas is. However, they did go out and absolutely stack both offense and defense through the portal. I believe they got 17 or 18 guys in the portal, like you said, the number one portal class going into this season. So you got, excuse me, I'm Barian Brown came over from Kentucky, Nick Anderson from Oklahoma. You kept Chris Hilton, who's expected to be the guy. He's no Malik Neighbors or anything, but he's expected to be the guy. No Brian Thomas, but
Burner.
yes, he can blow the top off the defense, and his expectations have definitely stepped up 2 or 3 notches this year going into the season. Destin Hill, you're getting him from FSU. You kept Aaron Anderson, who had some really big plays and really good games last year. But Nick Anderson was a dog at Oklahoma his freshman year, had some injuries last year, and then we all know about Barian Brown. He was basically Kentucky's whole offense the last few years. The dude is an absolute burner as well. So they've stacked the talent on the outside around Nussmeier a lot better, which is for a guy like that can absolutely sling the rock. That's great to have. But their offensive line, like I said, they're rebuilding it. They've got to have some continuity there. You've got Braylon Moore going to play center, came over from Virginia Tech. You got DJ Chester's going to move to guard, who played center for him last year. You got true freshman Carius Kern, who's expected to come in and make a really big immediate impact. And then from Northwestern, you got Josh Thompson coming over. So they've got some guys, and they went out and they plugged the positions, and they got big name guys to fill the roles that they needed to be filled. But the biggest question mark is, can they run the ball? I mean, they got Caden Durham, Caleb Jackson. Both those guys are expected to be really, we've seen what they can do. They are really good, but they didn't have much blocking last year. If they can get a hole and get upfield and make some cuts and then make their plays in the open field, I like where this LSU team can be. Don't want to not mention this guy, Tradez Green, big tight end. Really is probably going to play the slot some, tight end, wide receiver mix is what he is. Really big body guy. Made some really good plays last year. I know in the bowl game he had a good play on the goal line. He had made some a good play against Ole Miss last year. So I like where this LSU team can be with all the pieces they've gone out and added to their offense. But if they are one dimensional again, I don't care how good their run game is or how good their pass game is. If they're one dimensional again, teams can scheme against that, especially in the back half of the season, which is where you saw them struggle last year. As much as I love Nussmeier, his decision making has got to be better. He's got to be quicker with his decisions. Last year, especially, you can look at the second half of the A&M game. He made some bad mistakes, held onto the ball too long. I felt like he predetermined where he was going to go before the ball was snapped at times, and that kind of bit him. But that second half of the Texas A&M game last year is one of the biggest flaws in his game from last season. Now, obviously, he was a first-time full starter QB1 last year. So I expect him to learn a lot going from last season to this season. I expect him to be a lot more polished in the pocket. He doesn't like to move around a bit. So if they can give him some time, and, he doesn't like to run, he's going to try and find an open guy. But if he can make better decisions and be quicker with his decisions, I think that the potential for this offense is going to be through the roof if they can just run it 20% better than last year. Don't be 16th out of 16th this year. Be 12th out of 16th, and you're still going to be much better than last year. If you can just give me somewhat of a rushing game on the offensive side, just something, just give me 85 to 115 yards a game, and I still think that you're going to be better than where you were last year. Maybe that's a little too little. Maybe you're going to need a little bit more than that. But if you can just be not one dimensional, give me some type of running game, I like how they're going to be. However, the same question about their offensive line as it was Texas's. How are they going to play together? How is this group going to come together? What's their continuity going to be like? If they can get a push up front and they can run the football, they're going to be a completely different offense this year.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like you said, this was the most one-dimensional team in the SEC last year. Caden Durham returning obviously is going to be able to help that a lot. I mean, he had a really good freshman season last year. Yeah, definitely the offensive line is concerning. I mean, there's a lot of for a number one portal class, they're relying a lot on internal development on their offensive line for sure. And I tell you what, as you highlighted in your opening about LSU, they better get that ironed out quickly because going into Death Valley in Clemson, South Carolina, against that D line,
Yeah.
man, that's a tall order. But I do think with LSU, even if they drop that week one game, which honestly is a pretty decent possibility, I still think everything's on the table for them.
Yeah.
Um, like you said, I'd say fairly manageable SEC schedule comparative to the entire league. It's not quite as easy as Texas, but it's not as hard as Oklahoma's or Florida's again or anything like that. So
Right.
I would say it's a little bit towards the easier side probably. Um, but yeah, I mean Garrett Nussmeier coming back's obviously huge. Decision making, as you said, it's got to be better. And I do believe it will be. Having your leading receiver Aaron Anderson coming back. I'm a huge Barry and Brown fan. I've been tooting that horn for a couple of years now. When he's back at Kentucky, I love that addition. Nick Anderson from Oklahoma is another huge addition there. But Chris Hilton, he should be that go-to deep
Yeah.
threat guy. And at the end of the year, especially, like you really notice their chemistry. Those are guys that have been there a long time together. So I think that their chemistry is on a different level than he probably has at this point with some of the other guys in that room. So I think he's going to lean on him early and often. I think he's going to have a really nice season. But the run game's got to be better, and especially defensively, they've got to be much, much better because the last couple iterations of the LSU defense is not the LSU defense we're used to seeing at all. But
2023 was statistically the worst LSU defense in LSU football history.
yeah, and 24 obviously was better, but still not
Still
to
bad.
the LSU standard and what we've come to expect from them. But the talent has gotten much better on that side of the ball. They're getting more of the right pieces in place. Patrick Payton from Florida State is coming in. Jack Pyburn from the edge rusher from Florida. Um,
Hey, take
they've
your
got
time
to,
because you got to go through like 100 of them. They've stacked their defensive line with with portal guys.
100%. Yeah, a lot of depth pieces there. Dominic McKinley in the interior is going to be a big piece of that. Getting Harold Perkins back. I mean, who thought Harold Perkins would still be playing for LSU in 2025? I'm just hoping he's healthy. I'd love to see a healthy Harold Perkins. We've seen flashes, but he's just never been able to stay on the field long enough feel like to really show that potential that he has. Like we've seen it in flashes. They moved him to inside linebacker. I'm curious to see kind of how they use him as an outside edge rusher. His freshman year, he was absolutely absolute menace.
Why move him? That's my question. Why move him from there? I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's a very fair criticism. Um, the how effective he was, and kind of having him off the ball, letting him roam a little bit,
So
um,
quick.
making making the offense kind of account for him not knowing exactly where he's going to line up, just gives you so many different things to have to guard against and look at. Just thought he was really effective in that role. Hopefully his health's to a point where he can maybe be able to do that again, because he's a dynamic player when he's at his best. So, and then Whit Weeks, again, one of the better linebackers in the SEC. I think he had 125 tackles last year, leading the defense. So a lot of guys you mentioned up front that they invested in. Same thing in the back end. A lot of transfer pieces coming in. As I said earlier, the number one portal class in the country. Um, I'm not going and I think a lot of people have highlighted this, not going as far as to say Brian Kelly's on the hot seat, but this is a real make or break year for them because they've invested a lot of resources into this team. Obviously, when you go out and get the number one transfer portal class, that's not cheap in the year 2025. You have to invest a lot of resources to get the kind of talent that they were able to acquire, and I think it's absolutely playoffs or bust. I mean, I think making the playoffs in their mind is absolutely bare minimum. They're looking to make the playoffs, make a run. They feel like they have the pieces in place. And I think if things fall right there, that's absolutely a real expectation. I think they're going to be a prime playoff contender. Um, and like I said, if they can get the defense and get those pieces to click pretty quickly, I think they've got a chance to accomplish their goals. But this situation almost reminds me of Ole Miss last year a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Went really heavy on portal, kind of almost to push your chips in the middle for this season. Not to say they're not going to be good next year and the years following that, but there is a big emphasis. You were able to get Garrett Nussmeier back for another year. Same thing with Jackson Dart last year for Ole Miss. I feel some similarities between the two, and I just think those expectations are pretty much the same too. It's an expectation to make the playoffs and have a chance to make a deep run in the playoffs. I definitely think that's on the table. Don't know if it'll happen, but certainly their talent is in place that if it clicks right, they can get the defense fixed. They can have a balanced offensive attack. Um, but it's going to be tough early on in the season, as you mentioned, going to Clemson with an offensive line um, that's going to be working through some kinks and trying to get guys in the right position. They're banking a lot on internal development and having a lot of guys that were in that second unit last year, expecting them to take big steps forward and be able to contribute and have this offense at a high level.
Absolutely. You look back at the last few years, like you touched on it. The last 2 years, LSU's defense has not been what everyone expects LSU's defense to be. Blake Baker is entering his second year as defensive coordinator, coming over from Missouri 2 years ago. The thing the last few years that has killed LSU defense is rushing quarterbacks. I mean, you look at Jalen Milroe, ate him up. You look at Lagway last year, gave him lots of troubles. You look at Lenore Sellers last year, gave him lots of trouble. They have to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. And I believe that they have gone, like you said, push all your chips to the middle to create that. They went out and they got Jamari Butler from Nebraska, edge rusher. Jack Pyburn, SEC guy from Florida, edge rusher. Defensive lineman, Sadir Mitchell from Texas. Another edge rusher, Patrick Payton from Florida State, which I believe that he's a lot better than what Florida State was last year. It's not just a one-man show, obviously, but he's a really good talent. And then you get Bernard Gooden from South Florida, another defensive lineman. Then you got your Weeks brothers, West and Whit Weeks, at the linebacker position. You mentioned Harold Perkins. You got Devon Keys, who's returning. Deshaun Spears is a safety, expected to be their guy in the defensive backfield. But they definitely upgraded their talent all across the defense, and that is the main thing they were going after is pressure on the QBs, because that has absolutely obliterated in the last few years. When they face rushing QBs, they really, really, really get hurt. And then you return the best cornerback from last year, Ashton Stamps, coming back again. So I think going into this year, or going into the season right now on July 1st, I think that they go 9-3. A lot of the message I've been reading a lot of the LSU message boards. Obviously, I think it's funny, but also I get it. I understand. I'm the same way about Auburn, but they're like, floor is 10-2, gonna play in Atlanta, punch a ticket to the college football playoffs, the absolute floor. Looking at the schedule again, we're not saying it's Florida's schedule or anything, but it's pretty tough, especially opening up with Clemson. But they're saying the floor is 10-2, so they're expecting 10-2, 11-1. I mean, I think they might need to pump the brakes a little bit on that, because in my opinion, they go 3-3 in these 6 games. Clemson, Florida, Ole Miss, South Carolina, A&M, and Alabama. I think they go 3-3 in those games. I just don't think that of those 6 teams, you're only losing 2 games or less. I find that hard to believe, because Ole Miss lost some guys, but their quarterback that's coming in, his last Simmons, I believe is his last name. I could be
Yeah.
butchering that, but Simmons, he's a dog, man, and they still got players. At worst, Ole Miss is going to be your easiest win if you can get by those. You got A&M. South Carolina is going to be really good again this year. We know how Alabama always is. Clemson, game 1, again, I touched on it with Texas. Game 1, nobody's perfect. Who's going to make the less mistakes and who's going to capitalize on mistakes from the other team? And then that Florida game, just because Lagway, like I said, the Russian quarterbacks give LSU defense so much trouble over the last few years. In those 6 games, I just find it hard to believe that they're going to be better than 500. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they prove me wrong. Again, I love Nussmeier, but I think in those 6 games they go 3-3.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, not to piggyback off of you, but I have them at 9-3 too. That's kind of exactly where I was thinking. Kind of to make the Ole Miss comparison again. That's what Ole Miss went last year in the regular
Yep,
season,
100%.
9-3. It was just outside of a playoff spot, and that's kind of where I view LSU right now. Like, I think they're right on that borderline, depending on the way things fall. 9-3 could get you in, just depending on what happens. But I think they go 9-3, and I think it has them just on the outside looking in. If I had to make a prediction right now, they got to prove it to me in week 1 games. I don't believe I can pick them until I see them win one, and it may very well be this year. I don't think they're going to go in and beat Clemson week 1 against that defensive line, with your offensive line being your kind of weakness and what you're trying to figure out in that environment. Obviously, it's going to be an unbelievable matchup. Probably one of the best, if not the best, non-conference matchup of the year in week 1. So I mean, it's going to be an unbelievable game. But like I said, that they've had so much trouble with those week 1 games. It's like I can't in good conscience pick you to win that one in Death Valley against Clemson and that defensive line. As of now, I would probably put the Alabama game at a loss, being in Tuscaloosa, although the road team always seems to do the best in this series.
Yeah.
So you never know. And I will say the LSU teams that go on to win titles, they come to Tuscaloosa and get wins.
Mm-hmm.
The 2019 LSU team, even though they didn't win it in 2011, they lost in the rematch, but they came into Tuscaloosa and won.
Still one of the when you talk about greatest games ever and stuff like that, a lot of times when you look at the scoreboard at the end of the game, it's 28-24, 34-28, things along those lines. A 6-3 ball game being one of the greatest games of all time is still beyond me. That it's wasn't a 6-3 or 9-6, whatever it was. It was a 3-point game out.
9-6.
Either team scored double digits. 9-6 ball game, and that is arguably, as much as I hate both of those teams, arguably the best game that's ever been played in the SEC in the last 50 years.
Yeah, and thank God for Will Reichard and finally breaking the kicking curse at Alabama. But man, Cade Foster, man, couldn't hit water from a boat that night. Just about like the rest of his career.
He couldn't
He
hit
could
nothing against any Tigers. They're
he
playing the
could no
Tigers, chalk it up. He's gonna miss 4 field
no
goals.
that dude cost us multiple games. That if he could just hit a routine kick, the outcome probably different. Yeah, couldn't hit the broadside of Bourne, couldn't hit it at Jordan Hare either. Tigers just scared him to death. So yeah, you're right though. I mean, just unbelievable game. Um, but I just in good conscience can't pick LSU to win week one. They got to prove it to me. You know they have not won a week one game since 2019 and Joe Burrow was on campus. They've lost 5 straight week one games. LSU now, which they played really good opponents, but I mean, still,
Yeah,
like that
they lost
is
last year to
crazy.
USC in week one, if I'm not mistaken.
That's yeah, lost to Florida State
Horrendous.
twice. When Florida State, these were Florida State's better
Right.
years recently,
Right.
not last year. Florida State. Um, they lost to Mississippi State in 2020, the COVID season, at home. Uh, RIP the Pirate. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, 5 straight week one losses for LSU. I got to see it. I mean, um, and then yeah, like you said, I mean, kind of those coin flip games. I like to call them. You know, you got Florida at home. Several of them are at home, which is beneficial. But Florida at Ole Miss, South Carolina at home, A&M at home, at Oklahoma at the end of the year. It's going to be a really tricky game. So I'm like you. I just can't see them going through that 11-1, 10-2. I mean, I do think the talent's there. If they are hitting at a really high level, it's definitely possible. I just think the most likely outcome is more like a 9-3. I think if it plays out kind of like last year, maybe like we think, I think 9-3 is probably just on the outside looking in, which would obviously be a big disappointment in Baton Rouge this year. But I do believe they've got the talent to be right there in the mix, competing at the top of the SEC. And I'm excited to see it, how that offensive line kind of develops, and Nussmeier, if he can kind of rein in some of those turnover issues a little bit. But the big thing really is the defense. Like, how much better are they defensively? And if they're more like the LSU of old, that's going to bode very well for them.
Yeah, and LSU fans, you can hop in the comments and dog me for what I'm about to say. Tell me how wrong and stupid I am. But if he goes 9-3 and Brian Kelly goes 9-3 and misses the playoffs, y'all are going to be calling for his head, and maybe you're justified in it. But hear me now, he will not be fired because there is so much money left in his buyout, and as Cam alluded to a lot in this episode, they have spent so much money on this number one recruiting class in the portal, and there's so much money left in his buyout. If he doesn't make the playoffs, you're going to have to stick with him one more year. They're not going to be able. They will be able to, but I don't think they're going to be willing to buy him out with all the money that has gone into it right this year, going into this season, and the money left in his buyout. Regardless, I think he's going to be there for at least 5 years. So tell me how stupid I am. I don't care. That's the reality of it.
I don't think you're wrong at all. I think right now, like I said, he's not in hot seat territory. He's in high pressure territory. I think if he misses the playoffs, say they go 9-3, 8-4, I think next year he's on the hot seat. Like, that's
100%.
kind of where I'm
100%.
at with it. Or not even saying that's justified. I do think Brian Kelly's a really good guy. I think he's better than the vast majority of college football coaches out there. I don't even know if that's I really depends on how this season plays out, honestly. But I mean, I think if he misses the playoffs, I think that puts him in hot seat territory. I don't think he's there yet. I think he's in high pressure territory, like he is under a lot of pressure to perform this year, because it's kind of a tough look too when you look at, hey, I left Notre Dame because I didn't feel like I could really compete for an, even though I made a national title game there, didn't feel I could really consistently compete year in, year out. Notre Dame was just in the championship game.
Yep.
Now you're going to year 4 in LSU. If you don't make the
You've
playoffs again,
regressed every year. First year in the SEC championship game, and ever since then, you've regressed.
so yeah, I mean he's definitely in. He's among probably some of the highest pressure in the SEC. I believe, like you said, just in the circumstances, the investment that was made. But no, I'm not. I'm not near hot seat territory yet. We know those things can
I can
change
tell you
though.
LSU fans definitely are. From the message boards I was reading,
Oh yeah,
they
for
are.
sure. Yeah, they probably are. I don't know how the administration's feeling. I think the administration's probably more like where we're at, more so
Right.
than the fan base is at. But that's I guess kind of where I'm gauging it. But yeah, no, they're like I said, it's high pressure. They are expecting a lot. They are expecting a championship contender. And I do think the pieces are there to be able to do it. It's just up to them to be able to get it all to mesh correctly because that's tough in the transfer portal era. You've got a lot of new pieces that you're trying to get to mesh really quickly. And like I said, you're going into the Tigers' den week 1 in Clemson, South Carolina. So man, I mean, what a week 1 that we have
I know. I'm
on the
pumped, dude.
board this
Lots
year.
of
I
good
mean,
games.
I
Texas,
I mean,
Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, the two teams we covered today, both of those are premier matchups opening weekend.
yeah, I mean you can get after me in the comments if I've said this. I say this every freaking year. We've been doing this podcast for 4 or 5 years now, um, which is crazy, by the way. But
Yeah, I know.
um, this is the best week 1 we have had that I can remember. I mean, it is absolutely loaded, man. I mean, what about how would you? I got to ask you, what's your feeling about the Auburn Baylor Friday night special? Like, what's your? Or would you? Are you glad it's Friday night, kind of standalone? Would you rather it be during the day on Saturday?
I,
What's your feel on that?
I love a night game. I love watching a game under the lights. Absolutely love it. I do like that it's standalone. Um, I don't really care that it's playing not on a Saturday. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm glad it's not on a Thursday. I'm glad it's at least my weekend has started. I'm off on Friday. My weekend is actually started. I don't have to go back to
Yeah.
work the next day. Those are the worst. Thursday night games are the absolute worst. I will complain about those. But being Friday night, like you said, standalone, a lot of just not necessarily. I guess it is questions, but it's more of how different is this team going to look this year now that all the pieces that have been needed to be there are there. What's the offense going to look like? I'm pretty confident in Durkin and the defense. Not really much questions there. They're dogs. They're going to make their plays. It's all about the offense. So I'm glad that it's a standalone. I can watch it and then rewatch it and then rewatch it again before I go to bed and not have to worry about missing any other games. So I'm pumped on that. I get it a day earlier than a lot of other people do. So even more pumped on that. And I get to sit back on Saturday and just be a fan and not a diehard. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, man, for sure. I love the fact it's a Friday night. I love the good, a really good matchup before because Saturday's so loaded. I feel like it makes perfect sense to do it Friday night because I mean you've got I mean 11 a.m. Ohio State Texas, Bama FSU at 2:30, Clemson LSU at 6:30, triple header there. I mean I think it makes perfect sense to do it then. You've got a couple good games on Sunday, you got on Monday night. So I think it's spread out just perfectly. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And like you said, I love the fact it's a Friday night versus a Thursday night. I think it's absolutely perfect because I mean, we get some decent matchups on like a Thursday or Friday night week 1, but they like this to me is like one of the bigger ones we've had in
Oh, yeah.
quite some time.
Big brands.
Both teams are returning a bunch of production. Obviously, we'll get into that
Shout out Auburn.
during
Actually,
our Auburn
today
preview.
started the Nike sponsorship for Auburn, July 1st, 2025. So Auburn is now a Nike school. Praise the Lord.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't hate Under Armour as much as a lot of fans did, but it's definitely helps on the recruiting trail for all sports. But it definitely helps on the recruiting trail being a Nike school. I didn't hate Under Armour, like I said, like a lot of people did, but not being Nike is only beneficial and it's only going to help.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it may. I mean, obviously a big move. I mean, going to Nike is huge. Like you said, I think it's going to be really beneficial. I did think it was a little strange. I don't know if it's on Nike's end or Auburn or whoever, but like I saw that gear wasn't going to be available for like a few weeks, which I did think was kind of
Yeah.
strange. Like you've had all this. Like I said, I'm not putting blame because I don't know where it needs to go to, but I
Me
did think it
either.
was a little strange. Like you can't get Auburn Nike gear till the end
The
of July,
25th.
25th.
The
Yeah, so
25th. They've known that we're going to move over to that Auburn's going to move over to Nike for 2 years on this date. For 2 years, they've known, or a year and a half.
yeah,
And I can't buy Auburn Nike gear, official Auburn Nike gear, until 24 more days, 3 weeks. You got to be kidding me. Yeah, I thought it
yeah.
was stupid too. Makes no sense. But yeah, they're having a grand reopening of one of the stores down there. It's going to be all Nike. I'm definitely going to get me some gear for sure. Probably going to drop a bag or two on some of that. Out with the old, in with the new. You know what I'm saying?
But
Thank you guys for tuning in this week. So glad to be back. Miss doing this. Glad we're back in it. Football season is right around the corner. We are 2 months away and pretty much 3 months away. But man, I could not be more ecstatic.
yeah, I'm right there with you, man. It's just an absolute joy to be back. It's a lot of fun breaking down LSU and Texas tonight. Looking forward to Alabama and Tennessee on our next episode, and hope you guys have a great 4th of July. We'll see you back here next week on Saturdays in the SEC.
See you guys.